When you are exporting the PDF, you use this Export PDF tool. Keep in mind that this was introduced few versions ago, this export to PDF, so if you have an older version of Revit, the process is going to be quite different. But don't worry, I am going to explain that as well in one of the next lessons. However, if you have the newer versions of Revit, you do this export to PDF option. Once the tool is opened, first thing you can do is choose which sheets are you exporting. You have three options, and first is current window, which would export this window that we have opened here. Next option is visible portion of the current window, and this would basically plot the part of the window that you are zoomed in on. The option you will use the most is selected views sheets. And here you can either choose all sheets, which would export all the sheets you have in the model, or you can choose in session. With in session, you can click on this pen that you have on the right side, and then you get a window of all the views and sheets in your model. You can either select some of these you have here and then go to select options, but usually you will not do that. Usually you will use this create new set tool. Sets are there if you do not want to keep selecting your sheets every time, but you actually want to create some new set and then just select that set later on without actually selecting it sheet by sheet or view by view. Of course, if you just want to select few of these views or sheets, you can do that as well. But today, let's create the new set. We can call this, for example, DD project set. And this way, once we select all of these drawings, all of these sheets, we do not have to select them anymore. We will just select the entire set. I click OK, and here I will just choose all of my sheets, and here I have the sheets, and pretty much all of my sheets are plottable. I do want to export them all, so I select all of these sheets I want to be printed, and I click Save Current Set, and then I click Select, and now as you can see my print setting is selected. Export setup option allows you to save all of these settings. For example, if we were to finish all of these, select what we want, set up everything, in the end we can just click Save As. Of course, right now, since nothing is set yet, it's not something we will do. We can only do it in the end. Only then it will make sense. And the next thing you have is this option that says combine selected views and sheets into single PDF file. If you keep this checked, basically once you export all of this, it will be just one file with the file name you type in here. Sometimes you will do that when you are, for example, exporting the work in progress set, etc. But if we are exporting the entire project, we do want to separate those sheets, so we are going to uncheck this. And now once this is unchecked, you basically have to set up the rules for your file naming. And you click on this option. And here we get the window with the ruling of the sheet naming. I will just return this. Here in this parameter type, you choose which of these parameters will be in your file name. For example, if you choose project information, then you can say, for example, project number. And that way, if you choose project number, it will be first parameter of your file name. So here I will just choose project number and I will click on the arrow to have it as the first parameter. And then I'm going to go to sheets, and here I can choose, for example, sheet name, sheet number, and sheet name. And this means that our sheet name, for example, for this elevation 2, it will be first the project number, then there will be separator, then it will be E02, and separator elevations 2. So this is what I'm going to set up, and also you can add any prefix or suffix if you want some. And separator is also, if you do not want to have this line between those words, You can either add space or lower line or whatever you want. If you do not wish to have space between your words, you can just remove separator. For example, I will add the separator of lower line between project number and sheet name. Also, after sheet name, I'm just going to delete the separator, because if I left it, then I would get the line in the end, and I don't want that. I just want line in between those words. Once I've set that up, I click OK. Next we have size, and basically I always leave this as use sheet size, because we have set up the sheet size by adding the title block to our sheet. If you want to, for example, to use fit to page, then you can set up different format. In this case, I want these sheets to be exactly as they are on sheet, so I am going to use this zoom 100% size option. This option is incredibly important because very often people forget about it and they leave this fit to page. And if you do leave fit to page, it will not be in the right scale. Basically, it will just scale your sheet a little bit, so it will mess the size up. Basically, it will just make the larger margins, but that will mean your scale will be a little bit messed up. So just make sure that you set this up to be 100% of the size. And these were the most important options you will be always setting up. The next options we have are vector and raster processing, and these are also kind of important because by default your drawings will be exported by vector, which is always the correct option because raster means that your export will be pixelated and vector means that all of your lines will be perfect. You will be able to zoom them in like eternity. They will always be smooth lines and nice lines, and you will always be able to plot them perfectly and zoom them perfectly. So you will want to keep this vector always. But the issue is that some types of drawings cannot be exported in the vector settings. For example, if you have some shadows and if you have some far clipping offset, basically those will not be able to be printed as the lines. They will actually be turned into the raster. So in this case, our elevations, since they do have shadows, they will be turned into raster by default because vector processing cannot process shadows. So it's important that if you do have some shadows and some other similar settings, here in the raster quality, you always set up to be presentation because medium and low will not have such a high quality of the pixels. Basically, it will be too pixelated and it will not be looking good. As for colors, you can either leave it into the colors or choose grayscales of black lines. Black lines will turn all of the lines into black lines and grayscale will turn all of the lines into their gray shade. I will leave color, of course, and then in the bottom we have also a few important settings. First is whether we want to view links in blue, and that means that if we check this, for example, these levels will remain blue and those section heads will stay being blue, and if we turn it off, if we leave it on the default setting of being off, basically all of these will become black, and I do want it to be black. I don't really care about this blue color. I actually want all of the links to be black, so I will not be turning this off. The second option is hide reference or work planes, and that means all of these like scope boxes, reference planes, etc., whether we want it to be hidden in the export or whether we want it to be seen. And of course I do want to hide it, because otherwise I would have to hide it in the templates, and I definitely do not want this hidden green line to be printable, so I will also keep this checked. And hide and reference view tags means that once we tag some elements, sometimes it will happen that those elements will lose their reference. Basically that happens sometimes when we maybe delete some elements or delete some parameter values and tag stays. and therefore tag will have this question mark in the box, and whether we want Revit to hide those unreferenced tags with question marks or we want it to be plottable. Usually I will also check this to be hidden, because if my tags are not correct, I do not want them to be printed at all. Basically, the rest of these are actually self-explanatory, whether we want to hide scope boxes or region edges or crop boundaries. I do want to hide crop boundaries always, and I don't want to replace halftone with thin lines. I also don't want to export in background, because you can export in background, but exporting does take a lot of the processing power of the computer. So I always think that if I export in background and keep working in Revit, that my computer might crash. And like I said, I definitely don't want that. So I will always make sure that I don't work on my computer while the PDFs are being exported. It is a little bit time consuming, because if you do have a lot of sheets, it can take a lot of time, but I did have the situations where I would work while everything is being exported, and then my entire export crashing and my computer crashing and my Revit crashing and not saving something I did. So I always make sure that I actually don't use my computer if I'm exporting. Once everything is done, now I can click export. Here I can click yes if I actually want to save all of these settings, and in this case I do want to save these settings, so then I can give it some name and click OK. Now I just wait a little bit. It will take some time depending on the number of sheets and the size of your model, obviously, and also the quality of your computer. And now once it's done, I can open that folder. Here it is, and then we can open some of these drawings to check how they look like. And this is what it looks like. As you can see, our PDFs look nice. It looks very nice. It looks the same way it looked in the Revit. Also, I do want to open one elevation. And with elevations now, you see that they actually look a little bit different, because I just want to go back to raster and vector processing, because as you can see, once I open this plan, which was printed with vector processing, no matter how much I scale, this is like 6000% scale, all of these lines, they look perfect because they are vector lines. But when I go to elevations, I see that my line becomes pixelated, and that is because this is raster, and raster means basically pixel processing and not vector processing. And the reason this was exported with the raster processing is that we have shadows. If we didn't have shadows, this would be exported with vector as well. So shadows obviously look nice, but if you do want the perfect quality of the print, then you have to turn them off. But this is actually not bad, and it will look nice when printed as well. So unless you have like a requirement to print it on like a billboard or something, you can leave these shadows on and you can export it with raster. It's not going to look as perfect as the vector drawings, but it's good enough.